Hi there. Right, well, I've been a practicing psychologist for many years now, but I've been noticing this trend recently. When people come in to see me and speak about their problems, they're not just sitting down and talking the way they used to. Increasingly, they're bringing in their mobile phones and talking about their online identities. So they'll show me a Facebook post, or they'll show me a Twitter argument. If they're having a relationship issue, they might bring in an email and try and analyze the meanings behind the language used or the amount of X's used to sign off with. Emojis, I'm looking at a lot of smiley faces and trying to analyze those. Come to the conclusion that basically you can say anything you want online as long as you put a smiley face. All seems to be forgiven. But there is this really kind of shift in the way that we see ourselves, and I think it's because we're always aware of how visible we are online. So we're kind of standing outside ourselves and relating to ourselves in the third person. So I do a lot of work with body image disorders, and whereas before, and the conversations were very much about being a certain size or a certain weight, now people are bringing in their Instagram posts and saying, look, hashtag bikini bridge, hashtag box gap, hashtag thigh gap. These are literally terms describing things like the hollowness between legs, or the way that bikinis sit on your hips and they don't actually sit on your stomach. So all of a sudden, the opinions of others matter. Now, they've always mattered, of course, but now what's different? Now we have access to those opinions in a way like we've never had before. And this got me thinking, does therefore the way that we see ourselves online, the way that we create our identities online, affect the way that we see ourselves offline as well? Now, identity is this really interesting thing. From a psychological perspective, it's actually core to our sense of emotional well-being. When we have a strong sense of who we are, we take more risks, we come out of our comfort zone, we stand up for what we believe in. It gives us a sense of entitlement over who we are, but it also gives us a sense of affiliation, and that's the interesting thing, because identity is at the same time the thing that makes us unique and the things that binds us together with others. And the interesting thing is that for identity to really work, it needs to be recognized and confirmed by those around us. The issue is these days, those around us aren't just people that know us. There's this wider social circle online that are able to feed back to us without having any knowledge of who we are. Now, in terms of how we construct identity, in its basis form, we look at who we are, and then we look to the world around us. We look to our parents and our communities. We look to celebrities. We look to structures like race and religion and their norms, and we devise who we want to be. And once we've done that, we hold it up for people to see. And up until now, who are we holding up these identities to? To people that knew us, to our friends, to our families, to our communities. And they kind of acted like mirrors, right? So they'd reflect back on us saying, okay, I see who you are because I know who you are, and I see what you're trying to construct, and this is what I'm reflecting back to you. So it resulted in a kind of affirmation of identity. Now our social worlds have expanded dramatically. Someone doesn't need to know you to feed back to you on what they think of your identity. Someone doesn't even need to have ever met you or come in contact with you. Now, because of the online world, it's like having a global focus group commenting on every step you make, every move, every decision. And as a consequence, this sense of self-awareness is very evident. I did some work a few years ago for the Home Office on the sexualization of young people. And I spoke to some brilliant researchers that were looking at the web pages of young people. And they were saying to me, do you know what, Linda, it's so strange because all the girls' pages look almost identical and all the boys do. It's as if they have these scripts of how they should act. So the boys' pages, they were very kind of hyper-masculine, very kind of emotionally distant. For girls, extremely hypersexualized, all about the need to look a certain way. It's like these kids weren't saying, this is me. It's like they were trying to answer the question, who do I need to be liked by you? So identity seems to have moved from something that's internally driven, this is me, this is who I am, this is what matters to me, to something externally driven. This is what I think I ought to be. This is what I think matters to you. And as a consequence, whereas it was something that people went through during their teens and early 20s, I'm now seeing these issues with identity construction affecting people in their 20s and 30s and beyond. Now, because so much of identity is cultivated online, the feedback that we get online is actually extremely powerful. And I'll give you an example. It's actually in the press this week. A few months ago, if you all remember, 3 young girls left London to join ISIS. Now, I'm sure the decisions were very complex, but I think the concept of identity is very relevant here. They went from establishing an identity that was based on family cohesion, on academic achievement. They were often described as grade A students, career aspirations, to seemingly this complete shift where they shunned all that. And all of a sudden, they didn't want to be close to family. They didn't want to be anywhere near the same country. They didn't want to perhaps validate and gain value through education. They wanted to be jihadi brides. They wanted to align themselves with this political cause. Now, this is something we've seen with kind of neo-Nazi groups for years, and I understand the appeal. I think for young people, these sort of off-the-shelf identities that come with this warped sense of political conviction or moral justification, they're sexy, they're even sanctioned by God. But what's different now? Now, not only are they taking them off the shelf from the online world, but there's a whole group of people to say, you are making the right choice. And if we accept that a lot of identity is about satisfying other people, making sure that we're valued and validated, then that's a recipe for disaster, because these identities are getting derived and validated from the same place. Young, malleable minds look for identities to try on, look for causes to relate to, and then given how their identities and their beliefs are valued or validated or nurtured, they either take root or they're disregarded. And given the fact that so much of this happens online, we're seeing not cultivation, a grooming of identity. And sadly, grade A students aren't exempt. Now, you can't really talk identity in this world without talking body image. It's an area that I've worked in for a long time, and body image has always been very much about me seeing myself in the third person. But I think now, because of the proliferation of how many times we see ourselves, we are producing more pictures of ourselves than any other time in modern history. Furthermore, we're editing those pictures more than we ever would have in the past. So we constantly feel like we have to self-promote. And if posting those pictures on Facebook or on Instagram is like self-promotion, then what do we need to do next? We need to do market research, right? We need to see how we're being perceived. At any one time, I was just on YouTube, there are in the region of 23,000 videos asking, am I pretty? In Google, the search terms, am I pretty or similar, am I ugly, am I fat, get in the region of 20,000 hits a month. So in effect, we have a generation of people asking for permission to accept themselves. They're establishing an identity while running a separate campaign to feel accepted. No wonder the self and the selfie are becoming so confused. And of course, there's a big worry that we're never going to feel like we can live up to ourselves, these selves that we're creating. I think one of the other interesting things about how we sort of perceive ourselves now is we're so aware of the other, of they. I'm a Greek, so I grew up with my mom saying things a lot like, what will they say if you wear that? What are they going to say if you do your hair like that? And the thing that I think protected both me and my mom is that they couldn't tell us. They couldn't really. There was this sort of amorphous blob out there. So they didn't really have the ability to tell me or my mom what they thought of me. Now they exist. Now they follow us on Twitter and they friend us on Facebook and they heart our pictures on Instagram. They are no longer this amorphous mass. They have a voice and they comment and they describe what they think of you. We have zero control over what people say to us, but because what they're saying is visible, it affects how we see ourselves. In fact, it's even more complicated than that because now they are commercial groups. There's some really complex algorithms designed by some really clever people that understand human behavior, granted many of them psychologists, that actually look at how you surf online, look at how, what you're buying, what you're watching, and then they come back and they say, oh, hi, Mary, well, this is what you're doing, then this is what you need to be. You watch one movie about dogs, you need to watch lots of movies about dogs. You buy this kind of book, you need to always buy this kind of book. There's a sense that it's no longer people that know us that are reflecting back to us what we are and who we are. It's people that have a vested interest in us becoming consumers and managing those decisions that we make. And the kind of information that they give us, I think this is interesting too. We are deconstructing ourselves online. Like I was saying, these kind of little bits and pieces of ourselves and putting them up. But the feedback that we get is pretty binary, right? It's very thumbs up, thumbs down, like, retweet. No wonder emojis are so important. I had a patient, a brilliant young woman a few months ago. She's a writer. And she said to me, Linda, do you know what? I'm much more likely to get a like on Facebook if I put up a picture of a cute puppy than if I write something deeper about what I'm feeling. She said you learn very quickly online who you need to be if people are going to like you. And I think that's the thing. If my visibility is something that I can't control, and if what other people think about me matters so much, then maybe there will never come a place where I can firmly say, this is who I am. If I'm so aware of what other people's opinions are, if there's always another like, another follow, another retweet to chase, maybe I get to the point where I don't have the freedom to say this is who I am. And I get stuck thinking about this ad infinitum. You know, this is something I used to see with my clients that were in the public eye, my celebrity clients, that they'd feel this constant sense of self-awareness. Now I'm seeing it across the board. It's like we're all these mini celebrities, just without the great wardrobes and the limos. So all of a sudden, we're very self-aware, and we begin to compare. Now, comparisons are interesting. Whatever side of the social networking argument you fall on, whether you think it's good for you or not, you'll probably find several studies to bolster your argument. But if you look at those studies that say social networking doesn't make you feel great, they all point to comparing. Now, psychologists have known for years that comparing can either make you feel really good or really bad, depending on how you do it. When you compare downwards, that is to look at someone who's less fortunate, you feel better about yourself. You think, I'm very lucky. When you do upward social comparisons, on the other hand, you tend to feel less than. And we've known for years that looking at glossy magazines makes us feel less than. Well, what are we looking at online? We are looking at the superlatives of each other's lives. When we post online, we don't post leftovers. We post Michelin star meals. We don't post hand-me-downs. We post our most beautiful designer frocks. We are posting edited versions of our lives, and then we're going on and comparing, and we're constantly feeling less than. So all of a sudden, there's this amplified self-awareness. It's like we're standing outside ourselves, editing and re-editing and trying to gain information about what everyone else thinks to make sure that we live up to some, I'd argue, arbitrary, unrealistic standard. And this is the worry. If we don't have a strong sense of identity, if we're waiting for they or Amazon or Netflix to tell us who we are, then actually that can have a profound effect on our mental health, on our emotional health. It can lead to things like depression, which interestingly enough, some psychodynamic theorists call the difference between the feeling of who I am and who I'm supposed to be. It can lead to anxiety, this hyperinflated sense that we're not living up to some ideal of beauty or success, even to things like obsession and perfectionism, because we feel so out of control over who we are that we begin to control the minutiae. So what do we do? Well, I think firstly we need to take a page out of what we've done with body image. We know for years that getting people to sit down and look at glossy magazines makes them feel terrible about themselves, unless we tell them these aren't real, they've been airbrushed. We know once you say that people actually see these magazines in a different way. We need to begin to look at Facebook and all the other online social networking pages the same way. These are press releases. These are superlatives of each other's lives. So comparing is unfair. We need to think about the source. Anyone can tell you what they think. I think online chat rooms are not very different to kind of big old bathroom doors, right? Those bathroom doors people would scribble on? These are like digital bathroom doors. Anybody can have a say. The idea that you would internalize that is so unfair on your ability to genuinely express who you are. We need to construct identity via relationships, not expectations, through people that know us. We need to reflect back. My little girl, she's 12 now, and ever since she's been growing up, when people have said, isn't she pretty? I'd say, yeah, but you know what? She's really amazing at judo and fantastic at math. And I do that for two reasons. Number one, from a body image point of view, I want her to know that, you know what, looks are not the most interesting thing about you, and it's not something to invest in. Invest in who you are. But also, from an identity perspective, I wanted her to know that even when people can't see what's the coolest thing about you, it's still there, and you need to remember what that is. So speak to those kids, to those sisters, to those friends. Hold up those mirrors, telling them who they are. I think ultimately the problem with identity is that once it's something that's outside of ourselves, it begins to be something that we can't control, that can be easily manipulated. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for social networking. I don't think it's an evil thing. But I do think sometimes we need to disconnect from these constructed selves that we're creating, to give ourselves the freedom, to give ourselves permission to be who we want to be. I hope that all of you, all of us, are able to let go enough so we can become, I guess, the most wonderful, fabulous, and perfect version of ourselves rather than chasing those 2D selfies. Thanks very much.